My grandma's house was extremely haunted. Story time. I told y'all a lot about my grandmother's haunted house and how growing up, me and my cousins were all afraid to be in there by ourselves. One of my cousins that we'll call Brady was like my little brother. He was 10 years younger than me. When I was 30, I moved back to my grandma's house, and my cousin Brady, who was now 20, was also living there with his current girlfriend. It was Grandma, Papa, Brady, Shayna, and me living there. One night they come home lit. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I open the door and I'm like, y'all be quiet, you're gonna wake Grandma and Papa up. So they start laughing. They're like, hey, come upstairs, I want to show you something. So we all go upstairs to the attic. There are 2 rooms, and there's this big space around both the rooms. Like, it's just total darkness. You can't see anything. You knew something was there. You could feel it. It would make its presence known. Everyone knew the attic, the hallway, my room, and the bathroom were the scariest places in that house where the most activity was, so we would run from the... That's why I don't even like talking about it, because it starts acting up. But I'm going to finish the story. I let them drag me upstairs to the attic because I genuinely wanted to see what she had in the bag. She made it out like it was something really cool. When she pulled that Ouija board out the bag, my feet hit the floor. I took off downstairs. I said, I ain't trying to make this place worse. It's haunted enough. They come running behind me to my, you scaredy cat. I said, you damn right I am. And then Brady said, come on, if you don't do it with us, we might do it wrong and make it even worse. I said, don't do it at all. They said, no, we're going to do it either way, so you might as well come with us. So we all ended up going back upstairs. I said, look, y'all do what y'all got to do, and I'm going to eat my oatmeal pie, but I'm not putting my hands on that damn board. I'm sitting there eating the oatmeal pie, nervous as hell, watching them mess with this Ouija board, and then his girlfriend says, who's here with us? And it doesn't say anything. But his girlfriend cuts the light switch off, and she said, I asked you, mother... who's here with us? I said, all right, girl, don't go pissing this thing off now. It's already super active. We don't want to make it worse. Shayna had only lived there for a couple of weeks, so she had seen a few things, but she hadn't seen as much as we had. She hadn't seen the beast with red eyes, the floating shadows, the nun, door slammed shut. She had not experienced any of that yet, and that's why she was so ballsy to mess with that Ouija board. So a good 20 minutes goes by, and nothing has happened. She's getting really annoyed because she's heard all these stories about how Grandma's house is so haunted. She wants to see something happen. I keep telling her, you don't want to see it happen, because once it starts, it won't leave you alone. This thing will follow you wherever you go. Just leave it be. My cousin Brady says, I know how to make it do something. And Shayna said, how? Do it. Make it do it. I said, no, don't make it do anything, Brady. Leave it alone. I said, I don't have to say anything. It's just something I know I can do. And I said, what? What can you do? And then he grabbed my hand and put it on the board. No lie. As soon as he put my hand on that board, the attic door flew open and the bedroom door behind us slammed shut. In the other room, we could hear the fan cut off. And I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. Everyone knew that this thing was attached to me. We just didn't know why. It'd been attached to me all my life. So I snatched my hand back and got up and said, all right, I'm going back downstairs. I'm going to bed. Y'all have fun. But when I tried to open the attic door, it was wedged shut. I couldn't get it open. This was a small door. Like, if I kicked it, I probably could have busted it open, but I didn't want to break Grandma's door. Grandma was so funny over her house, and she did not like when you break or mess stuff up, so I wasn't going to kick that door open. So we all 3 start shoving on the door, pushing it, and we finally get it to open, and then I go downstairs to my room, and I shut the door with the lights on, and I get in the bed. I'm sitting there in the bed, and they're up above my head in the attic, and I can hear them walking around, and I'm like, good, they're up there, they're fine, everything's okay. So I cut my air conditioner on, and I just lay down, and then the light cuts off. I pulled the covers over my head just like I did when I was a kid, because I knew she's fixing to pop off up there, and that's when I hear my air conditioner cut off. It was right beside my bed. This was one of them old school window units that you had to turn the knob to cut it off. I gently pushed the cover back, rolled over, and stuck my arm out to turn the air conditioner knob back to off and then back on. But when I hit it off, I heard somebody in my ear whisper, you better get your cousin before I do. And then I went to, it sounded like somebody was right there in my ear, and all I could do was just swat at it because I didn't know what else to do. And that was when the whole house heard a loud bam. It was the attic door slamming shut. I jump out the bed and run upstairs, but I can't get the door to open. I'm yelling through the door, Brady, Shayna, open the door, push it open, kick it, just bust it open. I backed up and I could hear them bam, bam. Well, of course, that woke my grandparents up. Now, here comes my grandma with her big-ass paddle. Mind you, we're 30 and 20 years old, but that didn't matter in this house. My grandma's standing at the bottom of the stairs with her paddle, which has all of our names written on it, and she's like, get your asses down these stairs right now. So I'm going down doing the walk of shame like, yes, ma'am. And right when I get to the bottom of the stairs, she beat my ass, and I was a grown woman. I was 30 years old. So grandma walks up the stairs with her paddle. She opens the attic door with no problem, and then Shayna and Brady come downstairs, and then they get their whooping, and they go to bed. Later, I hear my bedroom door crack open, and I'm scared thinking it's that ghost, but instead I look down on the floor, and it's Shayna and Brady on all fours crawling down the hallway to my bedroom because they didn't want to get caught by grandma. I jump like, oh my, get up off the floor. What are you doing? Y'all look freaky down there like that. So they stand up and they come get in bed with me. They said when they went in their room, Shayna put her Ouija board back in the duffel bag and slid it under the bed. While they were laying on the bed talking, they felt something under the bed start shaking. The Brady gets up and tries to cut the light on, but the light won't cut on. The bulb like flashed and then busted and went out. So they come get in bed with me thinking it's safer, and that wasn't gonna do them any good because this thing was attached to me. It messed mess with us all night long. The doll fell off a shelf and hit him in the head. Something grabbed her leg from underneath the bed. We kept hearing growling. The bedroom light kept cutting on and off. The door kept swinging open and shut. I tried to tell him, this is the worst room. You don't want to be in this room. This thing never leaves me alone. That's why I won't go back there today. Don't get me wrong. This thing has followed me all throughout my life, no matter where I move. But the activity is way worse over there on that property for some reason. You couldn't pay me $1 million to spend a night in that house now. That place is cursed. I'm never going back there.
When I was a kid, my brother and I decided to go hiking in the woods behind my family's house. We grew up in a really small town where there was really nothing to do, so the woods was not really an unfamiliar territory for us, especially this woods in particular, because like I said, it was behind our family's house. This day in particular, confidence overtook us and we decided to wander a little bit too far into the woods, into a portion that we had never actually been to. We did end up actually getting lost because we found ourselves like not knowing how to get back. By that point, it was starting to get kind of dark outside, so it was making visibility even worse. As we're wandering around the area trying to figure out where we are, we end up coming across this hunter's cabin. It was really creepy, guys. It was like something you can only imagine would be in a movie. It looked like an abandoned old hunter's cabin. If you know what a hunter's cabin is, it's not really like an enclosed area. It's more of just like some sort of shelter, like some form of shelter, but there's one side that's completely open. Since it was getting really dark outside and we had no idea where we were at that point, we had no choice, or we felt that we had no choice, but to hunker down in this abandoned hunter's cabin for the night. We could try our luck again in the morning on trying to find our way home. At first, everything was normal, I'd say. Like, we were really scared anyways in the situation that we were in, but at that moment, like, everything was quiet and serene and we were feeling okay. But after a while of being in there, we started to hear noises coming from outside the shack. Started to hear scraping against the walls of the outside of that little cabin, twigs snapping all around, and heavy breathing. The sound wasn't human at all, and it wasn't very animalistic. It was more of like a deep gurgling sound. My brother and I just sat there frozen, looking at each other like, what the fuck is that? Then my brother, who's like maybe 10 years old at the time, gets up and peeks his head around the corner of the open side of the cabin. Reached for him and I tried to grab onto him, whispering like, what are you doing? Get back here, dude. But he just had this look on his face and I knew I wasn't going to convince him otherwise. He just had this look like he had to see what was out there and there was no stopping him. Sticks his head out for about 2 seconds before he slings his body back around the corner and just like pins himself up against the wall and is looking at me with this look of complete fear on his face. He's starting to cry. There's like visible tears running down his face at this point, and he just looks at me and through his terror and shaky voice he says, we have to run now. We have to get out of here now. I was not about to argue because whatever he had seen had him so shook it brought this boy to tears. He does not cry that easily. He's never been one to cry over anything. And I've thrown a glass cup at his head. As we're getting ready to bolt, I start to smell this disgusting, rotten, disgusting smell. I can smell it just in my memory. It was like something had died in the desert heat and had just been sitting out to rot in the sun. By the look on my brother's face, he could smell it too. So we ran as fast as our little legs could carry us. We ran, I think, as hard as we ever had in our entire lives at that point. As we were running, I could hear my brother's footsteps beside me, but I could also hear crashing from behind us, like something big was following us. I didn't dare turn my head around because I did not want to be the one in the horror movie who just falls over in a time like that, but we didn't stop until we got out of the woods. We didn't come out where we had come in. We had come out actually like miles and miles away on the complete opposite side of where we had come in. Like, we had come out on a completely opposite side of town and we were a couple miles away from home at that point. But hey, at least we were out of those woods right now. We escaped whatever that was in there and that was all that mattered at that point. We finally caught our breath. I begged my brother to tell me what he had seen. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes as he was telling me. He said it was this tall thing with the legs of a horse. It had really long arms with really sharp fingers. And that specifically, they weren't fingernails, they weren't claws, it was the fingers themselves that were sharp apparently. Once he got to this next part, he was stuttering because he was like, I don't think you're gonna believe me at all. And I looked him dead in the face. I said, bro, with that reaction that you gave, I will believe anything that you tell me right now. He goes on to tell me that he saw that it had like the head of a wolf. It was like uncanny valley version, you know what I mean? Like it was a wolf, but it didn't really look like a wolf. It sort of did. It was giving wolf. It wasn't a human and it wasn't an animal, and it was looking directly at him in his eyes. To this day, neither one of us really have any explanation as to what we saw other than an SW or a Wendigo. I don't know. What do you think it was? I still have no explanation, and it keeps me up every time I think about it.
If you listen to these stories and imagine them in your head like a movie the way I do, try not to do it with this one, because I swear this shit was scary as fuck. First of all, I know that I'd be translating scary ass stories, but I get scared too, and fuck this story. So this guy says that 10 years ago, and he's still fucking scared. This is your warning. This story is fucked up. So this guy says that 10 years ago he went on vacation to Puerto Vallarta with his friends, and they ended up staying at his aunt's home. This was around Easter time, so the aunt was also going to go on vacation to visit her mom, and that's why she let them stay at her house while she was gone on vacation. So because of this, they were going to have the house to themselves. It was a 2-story home, and he says that all of the houses in that neighborhood were very alike. They were all very excited to be on vacation, but because they got there very late, they decided to stay in for the night. He explains that him and 4 of his friends decided to play some like Monopolo game. I don't know what that is in English, but they were just gonna stay in and play games. And because the rest of the guys were very sleepy and they went to bed, they decided to go outside to do this in the front porch of their aunt's house. Now he does say that they stayed out there very, very late, but that the streets were very calm and like they were having a good time. Even though they were playing a game, he said that he felt a weird sensation, like he couldn't shake it off. He just felt like they were being watched. He explains that every time he felt like he was being watched, he would look at the windows in the house, or he would look at the street, or on the other side of the street where there was like some sort of park, but there was no one there. He would never see anybody there. Every time he felt this sensation, he would also get goosebumps, and it was about like the 3rd time where he got goosebumps, where he just stopped and asked his friends like, hey, do you guys feel like you're being watched? Are you feeling kind of weird? He explains how every single one of his friends said yes. Now, one of the friends said that when they first had came out to play that game in the front porch, he could have sworn that he saw a shadow in that park, but when he did a double take, there was no one there anymore. He said that he never mentioned it to them because he didn't really give it that much importance. He also said that he thought to himself that maybe it was just like a shadow of a tree, so he didn't, again, give it that much importance. By this point, they were all obviously a little bit spooked, and of course, being Mexican, when you're spooked, why the fuck do we all decide to do scary stories? Like, we're already scared, why are we doing this? So they all decided to start sharing scary stories or scary experiences that they have had. And of course, the vibe, being outside, being already spooked, just like went up times 100. They all decided to stop the game and that they were gonna start gathering all their things to just go inside and go to bed. It was in that moment where they were all about to start gathering their things where they all started to hear a laughter. It was a laughter of like a small child, and it was coming from that park where like the play area was. Every single one of them heard that laughter. They all started whispering to each other like that was a kid laughing, right? They were all whispering. They didn't want to talk loud, but they all agreed that they heard the exact same thing. So without skipping a beat, they all started gathering all their stuff even quicker than before, just so that they can go inside of the house. In that moment, one of his friends starts screaming, "She's there! She's right there," and starts pointing towards the park, and he immediately books it inside of the house. When the rest of the friends were like frozen because he had just screamed and pointed and ran, they all looked at the direction where he had been pointing. And he says what he saw, imagining it till this day, still scares the fuck out of him. There was a little girl between ages of 4 and 5 that was standing on the street in front of the aunt's house, just looking at them. She had this white dress on. He said it almost looked like she was from a different time. Her skin was very pale, but bitch, this... Okay, if you're terrified of the movie Exorcist, you understand why this fucking creeps me out, because they explain her cuts all over her face like the Exorcist. Keep it together, I have to translate this shit. The second that all of their eyes met this little girl, they all started screaming and started running toward the inside of the house. They didn't give a fuck about their stuff anymore. The thing is, when they all started screaming, they all agreed that they heard this little girl say, "Do you guys want to play with me?" He explains that him, from that impression of what he had just seen and heard, when he was walking inside his aunt's house, he could have sworn that he was about to have a heart attack because of how scared he was. Like, his heart was literally pounding so hard. It's not over. It's not over. If you have a visual, it's not even over, bitch. He said that he threw everything that was in his hand, and obviously they all started running inside of that house. And when they were about to close that fucking door, he obviously looked back because he was scared that this little, I have chills, that this little girl was gonna walk into the fucking house. But what he sees instead is this little girl go on all fours. Oh my god, like, I'm not lying, I have chills, I'm so scared, am I gonna cry? This little girl goes on all fours and starts running on all fours into the park until they lost sight of her. I'm scared. Fuck this story. Fuck this story. I don't want to imagine that in my head again. They closed the door. Obviously, they were all scared. And the guys who had got... Bitch, I can't talk. The guys who had been asleep, who didn't even witness this, they came out of their bedrooms because of all the sounds that they were hearing, like something was wrong. They were all coming down like, what's going on? We heard you guys screaming, like, what's happening? They obviously had to tell them, and he said that they had to stay there like the next few nights. But anytime nighttime came, they didn't even want to look outside that fucking window. They wanted to get in that house and like not leave at all. They also didn't have money to like go to a hotel. That's why they were so excited about the trip, because they were gonna get to stay for free at the aunt's house, because none of them really had money to like go and stay at a hotel, so they were forced to stay there for the fucking week. He explains how the rest of the week they they spent time inside the house, but they were so scared, like they couldn't even enjoy their vacation. I would have gone back home. The fuck, I wouldn't want to stay there for the rest of the week. Like, fuck it, let me go back home and be comfortable. Now he says that the good thing about this is that was the first and last time that they ever saw that little girl, or at least that is what he hopes. I'd be telling auntie bye-bye, you'll never see my face again. FaceTime me, maybe, even then, hell to the no. I'm not visiting you. You can keep your house. I'll never go on vacation there. So did anybody else get as scared as I fucking hate that I pictured that in my head. And if you know Spanish, you know that these stories in Spanish, so fucking scary. Fuck that. And yes, I'm cussing. And yes, this story needs the cussing, because what the fuck? Why the fuck you scaring me this much? You shouldn't be fucking scaring me like this. Anyways, who's scared? Not me. What do you guys think?
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, you won't forget. Don't eat too much, cause you gotta stay fine, but come on, bestie, it's... Yeah. Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. I'm whispering a little bit because baby girl's like right next to me sleeping. But a lot of people, like the new followers, have been saying how they don't know the words. So I kind of said the whole thing except for y'all part. But hey, bestie boo, I missed you. You want to go get your snack? Yeah, get your gardening essentials. Okay. Sorry I've been like missing out with the story times lately. I'm prepping because I leave for LA on Friday. Yay. So if I have any supporters out there, if you see me, say hi. If you want to watch my story times in long form, go to my YouTube. I just uploaded a new compilation. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. Anyway, this story is from Nigeria. So for the sake of the story, let's call this girl Ada. And let's call the guy Chike. So Ada and Chike were like the power couple. They were together for years, and like literally everybody wanted to be like them. They were so in love, right? Until Chike got a job offer in Lagos. So he ended up having to move to Lagos for work, but there's no worry about that because the love of his life is Ada, or so she thought. So he moved for work, right? And at first everything was fine. They would speak like every day, but then like slowly but surely communication started to slow down a little bit. But she's like, yeah, he's working, so I understand. Communication went from every day to like once every 2 days, and then once a week, and then like not hearing from him for like weeks. And anytime she would like say something about it, he would just be like, oh, I'm so busy for work. And she would be like, yo, like you work, yeah, but like there's no way you're so busy that you're only calling me once a week. Anyway, so one of the people from their village was actually in Lagos and came back and told Ada that she saw him with another woman, and I mean they were coupled up. Ada was devastated. It made sense. You found another woman. That's why you ain't speaking to me as much. Like, and she got like super depressed. She stopped eating. She stopped going out. Like every day she was at her family's house, just like sitting, waiting with her phone in her hand, waiting for him to call. And so like her family was tired of seeing her like that because they were like, girl, just move on. Like he moved on, you move on too. But you know, harder said than done. And Chike was literally like her first boyfriend, like the first boy she'd ever been in love with, right? So boom, one day one of her cousins told her like, girl, you gotta stop sitting around moping around about this guy. If you want him, I can help you. And at this point, Ada didn't even care. Like, she'll do anything to get her man back. So Ada was like, I'm down. Like, what do you, like, how do I get my man back? And the friend is like, I know this old woman that would definitely make sure Chica comes back to you. However, the things that she do is, like, it comes at a cost. It's not really for free. Ada didn't care, though. Ada's like, I need my man back. Let's go. So they make plans and they go see the old lady. And the old lady literally sat there and listened to her cry about Chica for hours. And then she told Ada, like, all right, girl, stop crying. I'll get you your man back. But you have to do exactly what I say. The woman went to the back for a few, like, did what she did. I ain't gonna give too many details because y'all like to try stuff. She came back and gave Ada a bundle of clothes. But she told her not to open it. She was instructed to take this bundle of clothes, go back to her home, and there was a mango tree. Mind you, she didn't even tell the lady she had a mango tree. The lady just knew. The lady was like, there's a mango tree behind your house. I need you to go and bury this set of clothes under your mango tree. Do it at midnight and don't tell anybody, and I mean nobody. Cool. Ada was like, bet, I'm doing it. That same night, Ada got home and did exactly what the lady told her to do, went to that mango tree and did what she had to do. 3 days later, her phone is ringing. Guess who it is? It's Chica. Ada is jumping for joy. And from that day forward, Chica was calling her every day. When I tell you Ada was happy, she's like, yes, it worked. I got my man back. A week later, Chica just showed up to the village. Didn't even tell Ada he was coming. Just showed up and surprised her. She thought it was like the absolute sweetest thing in the world. She was head over here. She was like, oh my gosh, my man came and surprised me. When he came, he like apologized. He was telling her how much he missed her and how he can't stop thinking about her. Ada is absolutely overjoyed. But then a few weeks later, that joy started to become a little confusing because Chica had now refused to leave Ada's side. And at first, you know, she thought like, oh, cute, sweet, like you don't want to leave my side. But then that wasn't really Chica. Like, he wasn't the type that has to be by your side all the time. I mean, if she went to the market, he had to come. If she went to see her cousin, her brother, whatever, he had to come. She was sitting outside just enjoying the view. He has to be somehow near her, even if he has to stare at her for hours. He's even refusing to go to work back in Lagos. At first, she thought it was just her that noticed it, but then like her friends started to like jokingly make jokes about how Chica is now obsessed with her. And it was like definitely like funny, a little jokey joke at first, but then like in the back of her mind, she's like, hold on, because she know what she did. And she really did try to like put it off until one night, right? He's sleeping with her and everything like that, and she wakes up in the middle of the sleep. Like, she just happened to be like turning, you know, tossing and turning. The way they were laying down was that she was facing the wall and he was behind her. And so she was like turning and she turned. And when she turned, he was up just like staring at her. She kind of was like, hey, babe, like, are you okay? And he didn't say nothing. And so she kind of like tapped him like, babe. And he was just like, oh, hey. And she asked him like, why were you just staring at me? He was like, no, I wasn't. And she was like, yeah, you were. Like, I just woke up and you were just staring at me in my sleep. And he was kind of like, no, I wasn't. I was sleeping. It was at that point that something in her heart was like, ooh, something ain't right. But she still tried to put it off, right? Cool. The next night, the same thing happens, except when she was tossing and turning, he's sitting on the bed staring at her. So she like touched him again. And he was like, what happened? She like, you was doing it again. You was staring at me. And then he was like, wait a minute. Like, when did I even wake up? When did I even like sit on this bed? What is happening? This started to be a habit, like an every night kind of thing, to where she's like afraid to go to sleep at this point, because if he doesn't remember getting up staring at her, what if he like does something and he don't remember it? And as this is going, Chica starts looking sick. Like, he's losing weight. His eyes started being very bloodshot red on a daily basis. Even started mentioning hearing somebody calling his name. Like, he would be talking to her and he'd be like, yeah. And she'd be like, who are you answering to? And he'd be like, somebody just called me. And she'd be like, no, they didn't. Anyway, fast forward now, he becomes very emotional. Like, he would constantly ask her, like, are you going to leave me? Are you going to leave me? You're going to leave me. I know you're going to leave me. And she'd be like, no, like, I would never leave you. We've been together for years. Why would I leave you? Cool. So his job ended up calling him like, yo, if you don't come up for work, like, you're going to get fired. And so he kind of had to go back to Lagos. He made a deal with Ada. He told Ada, like, I'm coming every weekend. Like, I will spend the week for work so I can work and then come see you every weekend. Ooh, he goes back to work. He spends 3 days at work. And Ada is fully expecting him to come on the weekend, except she woke up in the middle of the night one day and, she woke up to a knock and there he was at the door. So she was like, hey, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work. What happened? When she looked at him, she realized he's crying, like real tears. So she's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? He's like, there's a woman following me. There's a woman following me. I keep seeing this woman everywhere and she keeps following me. I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to go back to work. So Ada at this point, she's really starting to be freaking terrified because she knows what she did, but she can't tell nobody what she did. So she tries to calm him down. She like lays down with him and say, hey, let's just go to sleep. Like, let's go to sleep. So they go to sleep. And she wakes up about like 20 minutes after she thought she put him to sleep. When she woke up, he was gone. So she was like, what the hell is going on? She's looking all over the house for him, cannot find him. So something told her to look outside. And when she looked outside, he's under that same mango tree talking to nobody, to nothing. Not just talking, he's like arguing with something, screaming to the point where people in the village started waking up. News got to his mom, and his mom came and confronted Ada. Because elders, they already know what's up. And so she was just like, what did you do to my son? If you don't tell me what you did to my son right now, whatever you did is going to be on you so much worse. So finally, she confessed. She confessed that she went to this lady and they told her to bury something in that same mango tree. That's where she buried it. Cool. And tears and everything. She admits everything. So immediately, all the adults is like, you need to go unbury that right now. And so she goes to the spot that she went to unbury it, except she can't find it. She can't find what she buried. So then people start helping her dig. They can't find it either. So obviously his parents had to take matter into their own hands. They took him, went somewhere else with him. She actually never saw him again. However, till this day, her love life is trash. She's now 50-something years old. She has never been married. No relationships has ever worked out for her. Somehow everybody she dated always ended up being super abusive to her, even though like they've never been abusive before in their lives. But for some reason, to her specifically, like they would, yeah. That's the story, y'all. I give y'all 10 whole minutes again. Time is almost up, so don't forget to go to my YouTube channel and don't forget to let me know what you ate, okay? I love you. Bye.
Did I see a demon or was it something else? Let me go ahead and tell you what I'm doing. I'm starting a new segment on my channel called Paranormal Confessions. And basically what that is, I want to tell your stories, your either paranormal encounters, UFOs, whatever you've encountered that has anything to do with the paranormal, I'd like to share it. And I'm going to go ahead and do mine first. That way, you know that I would never, ever ask you to do anything that I wasn't willing to do. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go ahead and tell you my story and start this. I'm going to go ahead and kick this thing off. Again, I'm going to ask you a question. Did I see a demon or was it something else? I was around 15 or 16 years old. I was staying at my mom's house, basically my house. I don't know why I said it was just my mom's house, but I was staying at my house. I was just sitting there watching movies, right? It was about, midnight, 1 o'clock. And all of a sudden I just fell asleep. Now, let me explain something before we keep going. The couch that I was laying on, it wasn't like a normal couch. It was what they call a love seat. It was like a smaller version of a couch. It's probably 4 foot long. Now, I don't know if you could tell by the video, I'm like 6'7". And around then I was probably 6'5". Like I said, I was 15. So needless to say, the couch was a little bit too small for me. I had my feet up at a big angle. My feet were hanging off the arm of this couch. Anyways, that's going to be important in a minute. Okay, like I said, I fell asleep. And honestly, guys, this was probably the worst nightmare that I had ever had in my life. I mean, it had monsters, demons, whatever, it had everything that you can think of. It was terrible. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I woke up. My eyes opened. I looked towards my feet, and there it was, standing right there in front of me was this huge black thing, is all I could say. The best way I can describe it is, if you think of the Grim Reaper, how he's got the robe and the hood. The difference is when, this guy was standing there, this thing was standing there, he wasn't carrying that scythe, that sickle that the Grim Reaper carried. I mean, he just stood there, He didn't say anything. He was just standing, and it felt like forever, guys. I mean, it felt like it took forever. It was probably more or less 20 or 30 seconds at most, but to me, it felt like it took forever. Now, like I said, this dude was really tall. The reason why I can tell how tall he was, you know, my mom had 8-foot ceilings, and the head of this thing was almost touching the ceiling. So it was in between 7 and 8 feet tall. It was really big. Then the next thing you know, he picks up his hands, right? And like I said before, remember, my feet were hanging off the edge of this couch right there next to this thing. He picks up his hands, and these were the biggest hands that I've ever seen, the longest fingers. He uses those hands and he grabs me by my ankles. I'm getting cold chills thinking about it right now. He grabs me by my ankles and he starts pulling me towards the end of the couch. And I did the only thing that I knew to do at that point. I closed my eyes and I prayed to Jesus. You know, I asked Jesus to help me. I closed my eyes like that and I said, Jesus, please help me. And I opened my eyes and this thing was gone. Thank God it was gone. Now, like I said in the beginning, was this a demon or was it something else? I believe it was a demon. Now, let me tell you why. A couple of weeks before this happened, I just started going to church with my best friend. And a week before this happened, I got saved. I gave my life to Jesus. And I honestly believe that this thing showed up. I think the devil was trying to tell me something, like scare me into whatever he wanted me to do. I don't know. I can't really explain it. I've never seen it again, thank God. I've had other encounters, but I'm going to share those with you later on, you know, as time goes. Like I said, I don't know. I've never seen this thing again. But the thing is, what gets me now is, I mean, like I said, I was 15 when it happened, and I'm a grown-ass man now. So, I mean, it's been probably 30 years since that happened. And I still, to this day, I wake up. You know when you wake up and your eyes are still closed? I still wake up with my eyes closed, scared to open my eyes because I'm afraid he's going to be right there at the foot of my bed. And I know that sounds childish, but if anybody has experienced anything close to this, you'll understand what I'm saying. The fear never goes away, ever. My thing is, if it was a dream, like the reason why I mentioned the nightmare before is because I could tell the difference between a dream and real life. Yeah, I don't know I don't know if you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about I knew that I was in a dream when I was in that nightmare, and I knew that I was in the real world when I saw this demon. Let me explain why. You know, when you're in a dream, you feel like you're in reality. You feel like you're in the real world. You know, you feel like this is your house, or you're driving your car, or you're in your hometown, whatever. But when you wake up, you realize, well, shit, that house was different. That wasn't my real house, or this wasn't my town. This wasn't my family, blah, blah, blah. Now, the reason why I say that is whenever I woke up and I saw that demon, I could still picture everything that was around me, and everything in that house, you know, around the couch, you know, the furniture, the fireplace, the TV, everything was in its place. So that's another reason why I know that this really happened. This really happened to me, and I'll go to my grave swearing that this really happened to me. So anyways, go ahead and put down in the comments what you think. Was it a demon, or, you know, am I crazy? I might be crazy. You never know. But like I said earlier, I'm starting a new segment, calling it Paranormal Confessions. I'm going to be putting people's encounters into my long form videos, and I'll be doing some on here. Also, I'm not, you know, I don't have to be the one telling your stories. You could send me in videos, or you can send me in voice recordings. If you're more comfortable with doing that, all you have to do is email me at relativeperspective76@gmail.com. Or you can visit my website at relativeperspectivemedia.com. There's a place in there where you can tell me your stories and, you know, send me your stuff. I would love to share your story. Now, look, and another thing, I know how it is when you're scared to tell your story. You're scared that people are going to laugh at you. That's the main reason why I want to do this. I want to give people a safe place to share their stories and not get laughed at. Because I promise you, I will never, ever laugh at a story that you send me. I will never, ever call you a liar, because I know how that feels. So go ahead and start sending in your stories. And If you don't want me to tell people who you are, you can remain anonymous. Whatever you want to do, I'll give you a different name, however you want to do it. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my story. Go ahead and send in your stories. God bless you. I love you. And have a good day. Look how beautiful it is out here in the swamps of Louisiana.
I'm always telling you guys that the Appalachian Mountains are older than bones, but it's true! These mountains existed before the Atlantic Ocean even separated continents. They were already ancient when the first humans ever walked the earth. And honestly, I think that one fact alone is what really unsettles people when it comes to Appalachia the most. But there really is something about Appalachia that people struggle to explain. And I know the internet has kind of turned Appalachia into like this kind of horror meme lately, like, oh, don't whistle in the woods, don't answer voices at night. But the truly unsettling part is that these beliefs came way before TikTok and Reddit even disclosed any of these new stories that are coming out. Mountain people have been warning people about certain areas of this mountain range for generations. It's not because of bears, criminals, or freaks in the woods, but it's because they themselves have been out in the woods where they have experienced one certain section where time itself just feels completely off. The deeper you go into these Appalachian folklore stories, the less likely it seems to be paranormal and starts to sound more like a glitch in the Matrix kind of story. One of the weirdest parts of this is that a lot of these stories come from multiple parts of Appalachia, not just one place. Like it'll come from West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, Eastern Tennessee. Different people, different mountains, but the same exact experience. That says something. People describe walking through forests and the atmosphere just suddenly changes. The air starts to feel heavy, the woods become unnaturally silent, even the lights start looking different. Humans are not supposed to hear the silence of the woods. The silence of the woods, it just means something is about to go down. Something's around, usually is what that means. That's one of the most common repetitive things that you hear within these stories. The silence. The silence so deafening, it literally feels like the forest is holding its breath. There was a description from one man who said when he was hiking, he actually stopped hearing his own footsteps because the sounds of the forest just became so hollow. One Reddit user wrote that he was hiking out with his friends one time, and all of a sudden the forest around them started to change and not match up with the map that they were following this entire time. They had used that same map dozens of times before, so it wasn't like an error. They kept walking, convinced that they had just taken a wrong turn. Then eventually all of them collectively started to realize that something was deeply off. Trees were different colors, the trees were different sizes, terrain felt strange and just looked completely unfamiliar than what they've ever seen before. Even the air itself started to feel a bit different. And then they started to hear some voices. At first it sounded really distant, almost like people were talking off in the distance of the woods. As they kept moving, all of those sounds became distorted. One of the hikers froze in his tracks and he was looking off into the distance, and he asked the other hikers, "Do you see those people standing there?" Nobody else could see people except this one hiker. He said that all of them were standing there staring directly at them. Obviously, there could be rational explanations for all of these experiences. Fear affects perception. Isolation affects perception. Dense forests really destroy a human's way of navigation. Scientists even say it's super hard and very unnatural actually for humans to walk in a straight line in the woods, unless we have something to follow, of course. There are some stories that are just way harder to explain away completely, especially the missing time stories. Sorry for the angle switch, I had to put my phone on the charger. But anyways, there are countless encounters of hikers, campers, and just travelers in general saying that they have huge chunks of time missing from their excursion. Imagine huge chunks of time just completely disappearing from your reality. There was one person who entered the forest during broad daylight, and then supposedly hours went by and they emerged back out with absolutely no memory of ever going into those forests to begin with. Their phone battery had been completely drained despite not even being used. Others describe walking for what only felt like 15 minutes to only find out that they had been walking for the entire day from dusk till dawn. And what's strange about these is usually this happens where people they're familiar with the area. I mean, just imagine walking or hiking in an area of the woods that you have hiked your entire life or have been to multiple times before, and you're just walking, everything looks fine, you've been here before, and all of a sudden you don't know where you are. The woods looks unfamiliar. Nothing around you looks like anything you've ever seen before. Like I said, people describe things differently. Like trees look different. They're different colors, different sizes. Trees almost seeming to be out of place, if you know what I mean. Which is crazy, because have you guys been on that side of TikTok where that guy's tree is literally moving closer and closer to his house every single day, and he shows proof of that? Fucking crazy. But the one story that really turned this into like a question of whether or not there are portals out in those woods was when this one guy posted a story on Reddit where he was walking through the woods and all of a sudden the light physically changed. Like when he stepped through, it felt like he was stepping through a different, I don't know, like how do you explain this? I can't find the actual thread of the story anymore. He described like walking through the forest and it being like a regular day, and then all of a sudden the light literally changed and it felt like he was in a different place altogether, like he had passed through some threshold. A lot of Appalachians actually believe in what they call the thin place, which are basically areas between worlds that are supposedly weaker than the rest. There's an old saying in Appalachia that my grandma used to tell me and my cousins, and it was, don't go wandering out of the world. Honestly, as a little kid hearing that, it never really terrified me until I truly learned about the horrors out there. But honestly, I don't think monsters are what truly scares people about Appalachia. I think what really scares people is that the idea of reality itself might not be as stable as we think it is. And Appalachia proves this time and time again.
If a glitch like this ever happened to me, it would drive me crazy. The woman telling this story would like to remain anonymous, but she says that this is one of the strangest things that has ever happened to her. She has a regular jogging route near her gym. She says it's safe and predictable. She's run this route so many times, she can do it without even thinking. One of those mindless zone out and go type of thing. But every once in a while, on that same route, she'll notice something up ahead. Okay, so she'll see people randomly that are walking. Their stride is normal and the motions are accurate, but they never move forward. Kind of like old school video games where the character hits a wall and then they just keep walking and they're not going anywhere. Their bodies keep cycling, but the position on the sidewalk does not change. And anytime that this happens, when she gets close enough, it's like they snap out of it and then they continue to go forward. So one time she sees somebody do exactly this, and then eventually when she got close enough, they snapped out of it and then went and turned a corner. So she jogs right up behind them, and the moment she turns the corner, they are gone. She makes it clear that there was no driveway or turn or anything that they could have gone behind. And she had a straight, clear view down the whole length of the next street, and there's just nowhere that they could have gone. And yet they were nowhere. And then it happened again near a long driveway near her gym. Someone walking in place, stuck on a loop, bodies doing the motions, not moving an inch. And listen, she glanced away for a split second, looked back over, and they were gone. Like winking out of existence. She says no car pulling away, no door closing. They wouldn't have been able to get anywhere in that fraction of a second. And she says this has happened to her on multiple occasions. And to this day, there is no explanation for it. So what do you guys think? I know that was a quick one, but freaking fascinating. Drop your thoughts in the comment. And if you have a creepy story of your own of any kind, please share it. If you are interested in Creepy Storytime merch, you got to check out the LINK in my bio. If you're new, don't forget to follow for more Creepy Storytime.
Growing up in Appalachia, my grandfather only had 3 rules. Number 1, don't go in the woods after dark. Number 2, don't follow voices. And number 3, if you hear whistling, don't whistle back. Hi everyone, welcome back to Candlelit Whispers with Amanda. Today we have an interesting listener-submitted story about a camping experience in the Appalachian Mountains. I always thought these were just mountain superstitions. Until last year. My brother and I were camping on the edge of the forest outside a small town in the mountains. It was cold, quiet, and so dark that once the campfire died, you couldn't see anything. Around midnight we heard it, a whistle, one short note. Somewhere deep in the woods, and my brother looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" I nodded, and a few minutes passed, and then it came again. The exact same whistle, but closer this time. My grandfather's warning immediately popped into my head, "Don't whistle back." My brother laughed, "It's probably just someone messing around." Then he whistled the same note back into the woods. The forest went silent. I feel like everyone always has that same warning, do not whistle. But people still whistle. I don't understand it. The forest went silent, completely silent. No insects, no wind, nothing. We sat there in complete darkness. Then the whistle answered, the same note, only now it sounded closer, maybe 50 yards away. My brother stopped smiling, and neither of us said a word. A few seconds later it came again. Closer, then again, even closer. Each whistle moving through the trees towards our campsite. 30 yards, 20, then 10. By then we were both standing, listening and waiting for whatever comes next. Then the whistling stopped, right outside of our firelight. Something was there. We couldn't see it, but we could feel it, and we felt it was watching us. My brother grabbed his flashlight and pointed it towards the trees, but there was nothing, just darkness. Then from behind us, the whistle. Right behind us. We spun around. Somehow, the whistle had went from in front of us to directly behind us without making any noise. That's when we started to hear footsteps, slow, heavy, circling the campsite. Every time we'd shine the flashlight in the direction of the sound, it would stop. The second we lowered the lights, the footsteps would continue. Around and around for nearly an hour. Neither of us slept. Eventually the sound stopped, and the next morning we packed up and left. As we were packing up the truck, my brother froze. There were muddy footprints surrounding our campsite. A complete circle. There were dozens of them. Every footprint was facing the tent. Not a single one was pointed away. Like whatever had made them spent a lot of time standing there, watching. My brother has never whistled in the woods again. Neither have I, and every time I think about that night, I think about what my grandfather told me years later. If something whistles at you in the woods, it's not trying to talk. It's trying to see if you will answer. Wow, I feel like people should just follow the advice and not whistle in the woods, but you let me know what you think about this story in the comments below.
I moved to Albuquerque for cheap rent. I'm never leaving, and neither should you. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. My name is David. I work as a chef at a well-known hotel, and I made the mistake of renting an apartment on the outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I didn't move into that place because it was nice. I moved there because it was suspiciously cheap. The building was old, made of faded, crumbling bricks. It sat at the very end of Sandia Crest Road, a place where you hear nothing but the dry desert wind kicking up dust. My first night there, I was unpacking boxes on the hardwood floor, listening to the sharp, agonizing creak of the boards with every step I took. That was when I noticed it, in the kitchen. There was a small hole in the wall, tucked behind the refrigerator. I figured it was just normal wear and tear from an old building, but when I looked closer, it looked like it had been bored out by a sharp tool, perfectly round, about the size of a thumb. I didn't think much of it at the time. Old buildings are full of oddities. But at 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound, a faint rhythmic tapping. It was coming from inside that hole. I tried to ignore it. I buried my head under my pillow, but the sound didn't stop. It was a slow, deliberate cadence. 3 taps, then silent for 5 seconds. Then 3 more. A chill ran straight down my spine. I got up slowly, trembling, and grabbed my phone's flashlight. I walked towards the kitchen. The second I shined the light into that hole, everything stopped. I froze. I leaned in, peering through that narrow opening, and all I saw was absolute darkness on the other side. But then the smell hit me. It was like rotting meat, mixed with the sharp chemical sting of cheap hospital disinfectant. I stumbled back, hit the edge of the table, and the silverware in the drawer spilled out, crashing onto the floor. It was so loud it shattered the silence of the night, and then, from behind the wall, I heard it, a faint, wet, heavy breathing. It sounded like someone was pressing their nose right up against the other side of that hole, inhaling and letting out a muffled, ragged exhale. My limbs felt paralyzed. I couldn't move for a full minute. Eventually, I backed away, reached my bedroom, and locked the door behind me. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of my bed, terrified to close my eyes. Every time I tried to drift off, that breathing got louder.
It moved from the kitchen to the wall shared with my bedroom, as if something was walking inside the void between the walls, watching every move I made. By the time the early morning light crept in, and I thought I could finally leave for work, I found something on my bedroom door handle. It was covered in a slimy, gray substance, like wet ash or clear human fingerprints, but they were unnaturally long, like the hand that left them belonged to something deeply, terrifyingly deformed. By the next day, I tried to convince myself I was just exhausted, hallucinating from stress. I went to a nearby buy low store to get some supplies to patch that hole, but the man behind the counter, an old guy with a face like crumpled parchment, looked at me in a way that made my skin crawl. I asked him about the building's history. He stopped wiping the counter, looked me dead in the eyes, and whispered, "Don't be there after sunset." He didn't explain. He just said the building used to be a warehouse for an old pharmaceutical plant, and it was shut back down in the 90s after 3 workers disappeared under mysterious circumstances. I went back to the apartment, my nerves completely shot. When I opened the door, it looked the same, but the chaos was worse. Boxes were ripped open, like something was frantically digging for something specific. My clothes were strewn across the floor, and that stench of disinfectant was unbearable. I decided right then I'm leaving, and I started packing my bag with frantic shaking hands. And then, click, the sound of the front door deadbolt locking. My heart stopped. I had locked the door, sure, but the key was still in my pocket. The handle started to turn, slowly, then stopped. It was like someone was trying to break in. It was like someone was playing with the handle, moving it a few millimeters back and forth, testing the strength of the lock. I screamed, "Who's there? I'm calling the police." No answer, just silence. 2 minutes of absolute, suffocating silence. Then I heard the sound of metal scratching against the wood on the outside, like someone was using a knife to carve something. I crept up to the door, looked behind the peephole, and saw only the dark hallway. But then, just outside my field of vision, something moved on the floor. A hand, pale, ghostly skin reaching out slowly to touch the door frame. I fell backward, gasping for air. I ran to the window to escape, but realized all the windows had been nailed shut with heavy wooden boards years ago. The apartment wasn't a home, it was a prison. Suddenly, every light in the apartment cut out at once, and I heard a sound, a muffled, dry chuckle, like bones grinding together. It was coming from the closet right behind me. The closet I knew was locked and shut minutes ago, but now the door was wide open. The darkness inside seemed to swallow the dim light of my phone, and then I saw it. 2 pale eyes glowing from the depths of the closet, completely still, watching me from the heart of the void. I didn't think for a single second. I just threw my entire body at the front door, trying to break it down. The closet behind me was moving. I could hear the sound of bare feet hitting the hardwood floor. Slow, heavy, deliberate steps. I hit the floor, scrambling to get up, and felt a hand, cold as ice, grab my ankle. It was a grip so strong no human being could possibly possess it. I screamed at the top of my lungs, kicked with everything I had to break free, and I heard the fabric of my pants rip. I managed to scramble away and bolted towards the kitchen. There was no way out. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter and spun around to face the dark. There was no one there, but the room, it was changing. The furniture had been pushed aside. The walls were covered in a strange primitive markings, jagged lines drawn in dried blood, and words in a language I couldn't understand. Then suddenly, a voice started playing from my phone, a weird, distorted recording of my own voice, saying, "He found me. He's standing right behind me. Don't turn around. If you turn around, everything dies." My blood ran cold. I didn't want to look, but the curiosity, it was like a sickness. I felt forced to turn my head, slowly. In the corner stood a figure, terrifyingly thin, wearing ragged clothes that looked like an old factory worker gear. It was over 7 feet tall, its limbs so long that they actually touched the floor. It had no face, just skin stretched tight over a protruding skeletal skull. It didn't move. It just stood there, the same muffled, wet breathing coming from its chest. The same sound I'd heard from the hole that first night. Suddenly, my phone died. Absolute darkness engulfed the room. I couldn't feel my limbs anymore. I just felt an intense freezing cold pressing in on me, and a voice whispered directly into my ear with chilling clarity, "You aren't the first, and you won't be the last." That moment, I felt cold, stiff fingers cover my eyes. I heard the sound of glass shattering all around me, and now I don't know if I passed out or if I'm still there, trapped in that apartment, while the world outside still thinks I moved out of Albuquerque a long time ago. The truth is, I never left, and there's someone who just moved in, and right now I'm standing behind the wall, just waiting for the right moment to whisper to them, "Don't be here after sunset."
The person that sent me the story called it, "I remembered the first time I switched timelines and now I can't forget." By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hello, Anti-Matrix. Hi! I'm Helena. Helena, and you can use my real name. I'm not sure which one it is. I'm so sorry. This has just started happening to me in the past month, and my cranium is absolutely engulfed. I don't know how to title this, so I'll just tell you the story. In the past month, I've started remembering every time I've switched timelines, but remembering the first time I switched timelines has me absolutely floored. Here's what I remember. I was around 8 years old and I was at a friend's house. I don't remember her name, but I remember how she looked vividly. We were hanging out in her basement and playing My Little Pony when her older brother and his friend walked down the stairs. The basement was cold and unfinished, and it had that cold and mildewed smell and feel. The stairs were wood and had gaps between them. It was a makeshift playroom. Her brother and his friend looked at us menacingly and switched off the lights, and I could hear them walking towards us, and that's where it goes blank. The next thing I remember is being at a different friend's house, and I was the same age. And I was in a dark kitchen around midnight. This was in the 90s time era, by the way. The light was flickering and there was the soft hum of the refrigerator. I was alone. I remembered feeling very weird and off, a feeling I had not experienced before, and I didn't recognize where I was or why I was there. I felt pulled to look in the refrigerator and saw that there was a Taco Bell party package, and suddenly and inexplicably felt very hungry. Everything after that in life was different than before it went blank. I had memories that weren't real and other people said never happened. I had a different teacher than I remembered, and my friends were for the most part different. I was in different activities. My family was the same, my house was the same, and I was the same. And the remembering doesn't stop there. I'm remembering every single time I've switched timelines, the times I died and woke up somewhere else, but also the same place. This all started after I began to do timeline swap hypnosis on my own, as I'm trying to get a timeline that my mom is still alive in. I'm curious to hear what you and others think. If you have any clarifying questions or anything, please let me know. Thanks for reading. I just don't want to feel alone. The end. You're not alone. We believe you. And you're really not alone, because we literally just read a story on live the other day from one of our longtime community members about them, the fact that they are literally almost on a daily basis are switching between timelines. And they even have like physical differences in the timelines. Like their feet are different sizes in different, depending on the timeline that they're in. And it's very frustrating for them, and they just want to stop or know what timeline they're in, because in different timelines, they have different memories and different people. And so you are 100% not alone. And if there's one person that's experiencing that, I bet you there are more. I'm interested because you say that you remember every time that you switched, but is it always that you're dying when you switched, or do you just like wake up and switch? Or does the switch happen like in the middle of your day? Are you not even sleeping? And the first time that it happened when you were 8 and they like turned off the lights in the basement, like, do you think that they hurt you? Do you think that was the time that you died and switched? Was your mom alive in that original one when you like first switched? And does this timeline swap hypnosis work for you when you're doing it on your own? Is this something, by the way, that where did you learn it? Like, is it like something you learned on YouTube? Is it like a practitioner that you went to that taught you how to do this? I'm wishing that I was able to help in any way and I had some sort of helpful advice or information for you, but I honestly don't. I'm hoping that maybe somebody else who is seeing this video potentially will have some help for you or information or advice or something, because I cannot even imagine going through this. Honestly, this must like really fuck you up, or are you just so used to it that it doesn't even fuck you up anymore? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you have any help for this person? Thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope you find the right timeline.
What's the creepiest thing you've experienced that became even creepier after you learned more about it later? I was driving from Tucson, Arizona to Durango, Colorado. I pulled over just outside Shiprock, New Mexico around midnight to get some sleep. I woke up an hour later from a nightmare of angry faces and bright colors coming at me from all directions. I started my car and turned on the headlights. 10 feet in front of me were a jackrabbit and a coyote sitting next to each other looking at me. I left in a hurry.
Years later, I was dating a Navajo girl and I told her about it. She became very upset and told me to never mention it to her again. I've been told they were flush pedestrians and I was not welcome there. When I was in my childhood home, I used to hear a woman calling my name when I was in the basement level of my home by myself. I recognized at the time that the voice didn't belong to my parents or anybody I personally knew, but I was very young, so I thought it was a fun game chasing the voice down and trying to find it. I remember the voice often coming from the room I was in and sounding so close, it was like someone leaning over my shoulder. I don't ever remember being scared, only frustrated that I couldn't ever find whoever was speaking to me. I moved when I was maybe 7 to 8 and didn't even remember this until I was in my 30s. My current feelings about it, super not chill. My mother worked the night shift at the hospital, and my brothers were way older than me, so I was home alone a lot. One night, the dog started going crazy and the sliding glass door just shattered. There was no brick or anything, and I was absolutely baffled, and I called 911. When the police came, they asked about several gasoline cans on the patio by the shattered door. They weren't ours. Pretty sure they were planning to burn my home down with me in it. I was 12. When I was a late teen, I stayed at my best friend's house. He had a 3-year-old son. He and I were drinking, and he told me about a dream he had about a ghost named Amanda that caused him to wake up, and he was freaked out. I was like, whatever, dude, neat dream. A few nights later, mid-afternoon, I'm chilling watching TV at his house, and his son is in the room playing and laughing. I go in to check on him and say, "What's up, buddy?" And he says, "I'm playing with Amanda. She's in the potty." I turned white, never told anyone, started to distance myself from that apartment. When I was younger, my brother and I played with a Ouija board. That night, followed by 2 more nights, I had a dream I was in a dark place with crows pecking at me, trying to eat me. It was not until my mother burned and tossed the board that the nightmares stopped. Yeah, something did not want y'all playing with that Ouija board.
There's something really creepy in Wisconsin. Now, I've been hearing a lot of reports out of the Kettle Moraine State Forest. Many people have been having this encounter with this dog-like human creature. And they describe it as being this 7-foot tall, half human, half dog type of animal that wanders through the woods. And there have been several hunters in the area of Holy Hill who have reported driving at night, having deer carcasses ripped out of the back of their truck. There was even a person who worked for the DNR who said that one night when he was driving, he felt a large thump on the back of his vehicle, and when he looked back, there was this tall creature dragging the deer out of the back of his pickup. And over the past couple of years, we've seen this huge uptick in sightings, especially in the Holy Hill area. So what is happening in Wisconsin? What are these things? Now, there was a story from this guy named Dale. Dale had lived in Wisconsin his whole life. And he said one night he found himself driving to Milwaukee. Now, he was near the Holy Hill area. Well, he said he didn't anticipate such a long drive, and he was so not focused on what he was supposed to be doing, he forgot to fill up his gas tank. And he said right around the Holy Hill area, right near the Kettle Moraine, his car runs out of gas on this back road. So he calls up some of his friends and his family, and he can't get a hold of anyone, or he can't get anyone to bring him gas. So he realized he was either going to have to walk in the dark several miles, or he could sleep in his car and wait until morning. So he decided he was going to sleep in his vehicle. So a couple hours pass, he's just sitting in his car, and he said from time to time a car would drive by, but he figured they wouldn't pick him up, so he just stayed in his vehicle. Now, he had his window slightly cracked to let some air in. He said that's when he started to hear some strange sounds. He said it sounded like something very big was moving through the woods. And he said that's when he looked over to his left, and out the driver's side window, he sees this 7-foot tall, wolf-like creature. And it is standing on 2 legs. But he said its legs were sort of inverted backwards. And this thing, he said, just came up to his vehicle, and it just started sniffing around it. Now, he was terrified. He couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't leave the vehicle. And he just watched this thing circle his car. And he said that's when this thing began to talk to him. It knew his name. It was saying, Dale, Dale, come out of the car. And he refused to respond. And he said this thing began to torment him and harass him. And every time a vehicle would come down the road, this thing would run back into the forest. And then would it come, as soon as the car left, it would come back out. And all night long, this thing basically harassed him. And he said when the morning came, it left. But he was just petrified. He had not slept through the night, and he just didn't know how to cope with what he had seen. So he said he managed to call a friend crying, and he told him the situation, and the friend actually was able to come and help him out and get him out of that situation. He left his vehicle there. But about a day or two later, he comes back to get his car, and he said there were all of these scratch marks down the side of the vehicle, like something had left it there for him to say, hey, I'm still thinking of you. So is there something happening in Wisconsin where people are seeing these weird wolf-like creatures? All Dollar Generals are haunted. Now, there's this thing going around where employees who have worked at Dollar General are coming forward and saying, yes, I've had really creepy experiences working at the Dollar General, which also would make sense because a lot of these Dollar Generals stores are built in very remote locations, near cornfields, near forest. And there's even this wild theory that almost all Dollar Generals are built on top of cemeteries. But when you start to think about it, if they are building these Dollar Generals in just the most random places, it's very possible they're built on houses that were torn down, old farmhouses, and even possibly cemeteries. Now, people have reported things like stuff falling off the shelf, diapers being thrown across the store. They've heard disembodied voices, people calling their name at night when the store is closed. They go and look on the security cameras, no one is there, but they continuously hear their name being called. There was an employee who, one night, she was working, and she happened to see someone walk in out of the corner of her eye, and at the time, she thought it was just a random person that had walked in after closing time. When she goes to look and see who this person is, she doesn't see anybody. So she goes into the office, she looks on the CCTV, and she sees this shadowy figure moving through the aisles. She runs out of the store screaming, and she quit that day. But the scariest story that I've heard of out of a Dollar General, there was this girl who said that weird things would happen from time to time at this Dollar General she worked at. And said a couple weeks before this incident happened, she went in to open at like 6 a.m. And she said there was a receipt in one of the cash registers that was time-stamped 3:01 a.m. And she realized all of the systems had been reset at exactly 3:01 a.m. So she tells her boss, and they go and they look back at the security camera footage, and they see the lights flicker at the exact time this security system gets reset. And they see this shadowy figure moving towards the front of the store. So she said after that kind of freaked her out a little bit. Well, one night she was working late, and she said it was like a Monday night, so there was absolutely no customers. She was sitting out front waiting for someone to come when she said she started to hear her name being called. She said it was really weird. It was coming from the woods next to the store, and it kept calling her name over and over again. So she got up, and she kind of looked around. She didn't see anything. She said that's when she started to get this feeling like she was being watched by someone. So she ran inside the store and goes behind the counter. Well, she said as she's sitting there next to the counter, she sees the doors open. For a few seconds, they just sat completely open. And that's when she said she seen this man walk in. But this man looked exactly like her old manager named Mike, who had moved away to New York. And so she said she got up, walked around the counter, and started to follow him. And she said soon he just like disappeared. So she started yelling his name, Mike, Mike, is that you? Like, Mike, where are you? She said towards the back of the store, there was these doors that would swing open. She said she noticed them slightly moving. She hears her old manager, Mike, say, hey, come back here in the back rooms. I need to show you something. She said as she started to walk towards those swinging doors, she began to hear this grotesque, crazy scream coming from the back room. And she ran out of the store. and she called her manager and said, I will not go back in there ever again. So if you've worked at Dollar General or you've shopped at Dollar General, have you ever had a creepy experience?
I don't know exactly what this house has going on. I just know that I personally don't want any part of it. This is a house that was just recently sold for $62,000 in Illinois, and it looks so familiar to me. And sure enough, I scrolled 3 years back in time to find my previous video on this home when it sold for $100,000, but a lot has changed since then. Not so much with the inside though, because we still have the symbols drawn on the walls, the big wood stove in the middle of the living room, and the creepy outline of the picture frames that once hung on this wall. Also, if you have any idea who the Holly King is, please let me know. I don't, however, remember if Witch is a new art installation here, but I do remember this Blair Witch garage. But here's where things get interesting, because on the last listing, I don't remember seeing this building, and I sure as hell would remember if this was included. Upon first seeing this, I didn't quite know exactly what I was looking at, but this is a medieval tower that has been built on the property. Here's what it looks like from a distance, and as if that isn't creepy enough, there is also a cemetery here. Mind you, the listing description does not mention this at all. I'm sorry, but we can't just skim over dead people being included with the house. This whole place feels very ritualistic.
I have 2 spooky stories for you about mimics. If you don't know what mimics are, they are creatures that live in the Appalachian forests and certain other forests around the world. And they can literally mimic the voice of anybody that you know, including yourself. One time I was leaving for work and it was probably 3:30 in the morning. It was completely dark outside, and as I stepped out onto the porch, I pulled the door shut behind me and made sure it was locked. I took 2 steps down when I heard my husband call my name from behind me. So I assumed I had forgotten something, because I always forget something. But when I turned around, the door was still closed. I ran to my car as fast as I possibly could, because I live in an area that is right beside a forest, and I wasn't trying to mess with any mimics at like 3 o'clock in the morning. The second story belongs to a friend of mine, but I have permission to share it. One day she was in her house in her kitchen, and her back porch is off of her kitchen. Her granddaughter was at the house, and she was going to go outside to spend time with another family member who was outside working on a vehicle. The little girl came running back inside and told her grandmother that she had heard her grandmother calling to her from the woods beside the house, but she knew her grandmother was inside, so she did not go to the forest. She came back inside just to make sure that her grandmother was there. But she swears it was her grandmother's voice calling out to her. I would love to know in the comments if you have ever had an incident with a mimic. I've enjoyed all of the stories that you've shared with me so far. Let me know what area you're in, because it is always interesting to me whenever people who live outside of Appalachia have interactions with mimics.
So how do I have haunted dolls, and how do I even know if they're haunted? Full disclosure, I don't. I am not a psychic. I don't touch a doll or see a doll and automatically know that there's a spiritual attachment there or an energy there. However, I do investigate these dolls that are claimed to be haunted with EMF meters, REM pods, smell meters, spirit boxes, etc. Okay, how do I have these haunted dolls? Well, first of all, if I do go to a thrift store or somewhere and I see something, doesn't have to be a doll, and I do feel for some reason like there's an attachment or an energy there, I'm like, you're coming home with me, okay? Except for this one, because it felt really negative and scary, and I was like, I feel sick, you're not coming home with me. But regardless, moving on. Otherwise, I have some people who will send me a haunted doll because they either want me to investigate it or they're afraid of it. And thirdly, there is a retired paranormal investigation group that kindly gave me all of these dolls that they had collected over many years. I haven't even investigated half of them. There's so many of them. As I said, I don't know for sure automatically if these dolls are haunted. I know that I can collect data, and sometimes it makes sense, or maybe it doesn't. Again, I'm not a psychic. I have had people tell me that they think I'm a psychic because I'm like, this is gonna happen, and then it happens. But that's just really strong intuition, and if I do have any like psychic capabilities, I really need to like work that muscle and learn how to actually be a psychic, okay? And even the dolls that I investigate and get credible evidence that they are indeed haunted or have an attachment, that is evidence. It is not a for sure this doll is haunted or this item is haunted. It is evidence that I have collected, and my thought process on these items goes back and forth a lot because I am a healthy skeptic. I'm not superstitious, I'm just a little stitious. Another question people often ask is, why would dolls always be haunted? Like, why is it always dolls? Great question. Here's a few things that I think. Number one, potentially these dolls aren't haunted. People could experience paranormal activity, and because a lot of people are just naturally creeped out by dolls, perhaps they are blaming whatever paranormal activity they're experiencing on a doll that's in their home or in their vicinity. Okay. Second option is dolls have been being used culturally and spiritually for hundreds of years to not only represent people who have passed away, but to call upon people who have passed away, to hold their essence. Dolls as a vessel is not a new concept at all. Now, I am going to talk about a doll was recently sent to me because this person thinks that the doll is haunted.
My apartment maintenance guy had a key to my place, but he was the one that was coming inside. When I was around 22, I lived in a second floor apartment by myself. It was my first time ever living alone. I came home from work one day and I noticed that my bathroom light was on, and that was a little weird because I always shut it off before I leave. Just figured I forgot, whatever, moving on. And then another day, I noticed that my kitchen chair was out while I was at work. That didn't make sense because I ate my breakfast on the couch that morning. And it was just like little things, like my faucet would be left on, or my bedroom door would be open when I know I specifically shut the door so my cat can't go in my bedroom. So I started to wonder if maintenance was entering my house without my permission while I was out. So I called the office and they said that nobody has come into my apartment in over a month, like maintenance-wise, which didn't make me feel any better. So one day I decided to grab like a colored string and I just put it at the bottom of my front door. When I got home, the string was still there, straight. I don't think anybody would have noticed it, so I'm assuming that nobody came into my house. And then that night, I was having a little bit of a hard time sleeping because my mind was just kind of wandering. And around 3 a.m. I got up to go get some water. And I walked in my bedroom and I froze because I saw my dining room kitchen table chair facing the hallway. It was pulled out facing the hallway. I know for a fact I did not leave it that way because why would I ever do that? And I just sat there because it was the middle of the night. You know how your brain is kind of weird, you're a little foggy, so I just stared at it for a minute. And then I noticed that there was something sitting on it, so I went over there and it was a little sticky note. And the sticky note said, "Stop checking the front door." I called the cops immediately. The officers showed up, they checked my apartment top to bottom, then they asked me if I had attic access, and I said, yeah, I've never been up there or opened it before, but it was like a little hatch in one of the bedrooms. And so they opened it and one of the officers popped his head up there and he went silent for a minute and then he asked for backup. And you'll never guess what they found. There was mattress, food, water bottles, blankets. Somebody had been living up in my attic, and they said that for the attic space they could move between like several different apartments. So that's what they were probably doing for months, is going through different units through trying to find food and sneaking out during the night when people are sleeping. I moved out a week later because ew, that was super gross, and I actually got a call from the office a couple days after I moved out, and they said that they found the person, and it wasn't a tenant, it wasn't maintenance, it was actually a guy who got evicted months earlier. Nobody knows how long he's been living up there. Something else that they did mention was they said that they found a notebook, and in the notebook it had each of the units that they had been visiting at night, and it had different entries. Mine had a ton of entries. I guess he was in my attic most of the time. And written down below, he said, "She's starting to notice," and that happened the night before he got caught.
Therapy dolls hate being yelled at. Jack had just turned 7 when his parents brought him into my office. A bit of a temper, they said. Apparently, the boy had thrown a fit at school when he lost the game and broke his competitor's nose in a surge of anger. A temper. The other child's parents agreed not to demand expulsion if and only if they got him help. And so they ended up contacting me. Now, I worked with many kids with similar issues before, but Jack was especially annoyingly stubborn. Okay? There was no trauma here. It was just a child who was spoiled rotten. And it didn't really help that his family didn't believe in therapy, only doing this just to prevent having to move schools. I could smell their disdain when they shoved him in the room and went back to the waiting room. Still, I tried, because I truly believe that, everyone deserved honest care, especially those young minds. But he seemed intent on making this as difficult as possible. Regardless of what I tried, his disrespect only grew. I asked him if he wanted to tell me about the incident, and all I got was a grunt. I asked him if he would prefer to draw it, and he called me and it dumb. Lastly, I asked him if he would instead prefer talking to Rupert, a therapy doll. I explained that sometimes speaking to him is better than speaking to an adult. You know, you can tell him anything. Just remember, he hates being yelled at. To anyone else, it would sound like a trick to encourage them to communicate calmly. I knew better, though. Unfortunately, that set him off completely, grabbing onto the puppet, screaming and shouting, roaring and shrieking, both incomprehensible sounds and swear words that a child his age definitely should not know, simply because he was given one limitation. Better not yell at him, I reminded him with subtle urgency, but to no avail, and it would be another 20 minutes before his parents took him away, loudly airing their grievances as they did so. At this point, it didn't bother me anymore, though. I knew their fate was sealed. And a mere 20 hours later, I saw Jack's chubby face in the news. Family of 3 attacked in their own home, 7-year-old sole survivor. They described the worrying scene in detail, how Mr. and Mrs. Smith were found butchered, how Jack's vocal cords were irrevocably damaged and he was lucky to be alive, adding that the boy had written the word doll over and over again. Shock, apparently. I knew the truth. I always took Rupert with me. Looking at the doll, I muttered, at least I'll be quiet now. But I do wish you could actually do some of the dirty work. You see, therapy dolls really hate being yelled at. And so do I.
My doctor said organ donors remained anonymous for a reason. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because we're about to read a creepy story. An operation you might not wake up from is stressful enough. Now imagine doing it alone. I used to have friends. As my disease got worse, I lost contact with all of them. My parents died when I was younger, and I barely talked to the rest of the family. It all meant one thing. I had to do it alone. All of it. When the operation came, I wasn't even sure if I cared about the outcome. I was just tired. To my surprise, the day after the operation, I already felt a hint of energy. Almost like I could feel the blood flowing through my veins again, and within a few days I was walking around the hospital ward. I thought that it might have just been all the stuff they were putting in my body, but even after I was released, the energy wouldn't leave me. Soon after, I was taking long strolls through my neighborhood, seeing things I had never seen before. Beautiful forests, lakes, and people, and all the folks were so friendly. There were even a few people I started having regular conversations with. It made me so happy. My appetite also grew. I was never a big meat eater, but I couldn't stop eating it now, especially beef. The texture of it made something in my body tingle. But all of that changed one day with a dream. I was in a room, alone. The room had boarded up windows, peeling yellow paint on the walls, and a floor full of trash. I was in my body, but it didn't feel like it belonged to me, and there was this strong, unexplainable rage inside that needed to get out. I woke up from it drenched in sweat. The sun was up, but it felt like I didn't sleep for a second. The night after, the dream came back. I was in the room again, feeling the rage, but this time stronger. I could feel it all the way in my bones. I jolted awake. The fabric of my pajamas felt strange on my skin. I had my outside clothes on. I was sure I had changed. I tried to remember, but the tiredness and brain fog were so strong. I could barely remember anything from the night before. The dream continued every night after. I was so tired that I would almost fall asleep standing up. I would rarely leave my house unless I needed to. One morning, I had had enough. I picked up my phone and called my doctor. Dr. Riley, Wake County Hospital, how may I help you? Dr. Riley, this is James Peters. Mr. Peters, how are you doing? Not good. I'm sorry to hear that. What seems to be the problem? I've been having strange dreams. 10 to 20% of patients experience post-operation PTSD. But this is different. They're not traumatic, they're violent. I feel so much rage, and once I wake up, it feels like I didn't sleep at all. It could be the PTSD. I can recommend a psychiatrist. Thank you, doctor, but this feels... Can I just ask who my donor was? Did they die violently? The doctor paused for a second. I cannot disclose such information, and that has nothing to do with your symptoms. I'll have the nurse send over the psychiatrist's number. Goodbye, Mr. Peters. I stared at my phone for a few seconds. His words kept repeating in my mind. I pulled out my browser without thinking. Fatal car crashes, violent accidents, but nothing came up. I resorted to simply searching for death in my area. I scrolled past the obituaries until my thumb stopped at an article. A suspected killer dead on scene. Police have pew-pewed a suspect, 32-year-old Matthew Connery, amid a struggle at the scene of the brutal unaliving of an escort. Connery survived the initial shots, were transported to Wake County Hospital, where he passed from his injuries. I dropped my phone on the ground. The feeling of drowsiness was now stronger than before, as if the man wanted me to go back to sleep, as if he knew what I saw. I quickly ran to my coffee maker and started brewing batches, downing each cup as fast as I could, but no matter how much I drank, the tiredness wouldn't stop. I held onto the counter and tried to reach for another cup, but my hand felt like it weighed a ton. Before I could grab it, I felt my legs shake. My body collapsed to the ground, and my world went dark. I was in that dream again. I kept my eyes closed and held my breath, but strangely the rage wasn't there, not even a little. My body felt relaxed, calm. I opened my eyes and took a breath. The smell of copper hung in the air. The room was cold and damp. The floor was filled with blood. A knife was by my foot, and next to it a motionless body of a woman laid. I woke up and immediately pulled off the covers. My clothes were on again, my shoes were stained with blood. My eyes darted around the room, and out of the window I saw bloody footprints leading from the road to my house. Panic surged through my body. I crawled under a table, rocking back and forth. I don't even know how much time had passed when the sound of sirens came. 1 car, 2, 3. Soon the police were outside, screaming my name.
On these York premises, the infamous Guy Fawkes was born on April the 13th, 1570. Standing in the shadow of the York Minster, this is rumoured to be one of the city's most haunted pubs. The original home in which Guido Fawkes was born, which is his correct name, would have sat further back where the terrace gardens now lay. However, a fantastically themed hotel has been created around this area that feels like a genuine step back in time. Many of us can recall that old poem, Remember, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I see no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. But many are unaware Guy Fawkes was part of a much greater conspiracy to restore Catholics to the throne and blow up King James. He was a gunpowder specialist, so eventually grew up from York and went to fight in the Spanish Wars. Upon his return, Robert Catesby, leader of the gunpowder plot, decided Guy Fawkes would be best placed in Westminster, as his face was not recognised in the area. The men thought their Catholic God really had smiled down on them when Guy Fawkes was permitted to rent lodgings right under the Houses of Parliament. Of course, we know the rest of the story. He was the one caught red-handed and watched some of his fellow conspirators be hung, drawn and quartered. After he was tortured and dragged up to the scaffolding, he jumped off the ladder and broke his own neck, for that was better than the fate that awaited him in London. The other defeated conspirators had a showdown with the King's men, but subsequently were all killed. Now that nutshell bit of history set, many believe Guy Fawkes has returned to his original family home, with his presence being felt throughout the inn. Those sensitive to the realm of the paranormal claim to feel the overwhelming sensation of a strong male presence at the Guy Fawkes Inn. Could it be the infamous man himself? Even if not, there are a whole host of historical figures that have visited this part of York over the years. Many have died within its walls. On a particular bedroom on the upper floors, I won't tell you which one in case you stay there and you're afraid of ghosts, people reportedly see a silhouetted figure of a man wearing a wide-brimmed hat and can just about make out his Van Dyke beard sitting upon the end of their bed. When they scream and ask the ghost to leave, he simply chuckles and slowly dissipates. Furthermore, cleaners have reported their hoovers turning on by themselves and their cleaning trolley moving to the other side of the room, seemingly on its own. This ghost sounds like a bit of a prankster. Other activity ranges from phantom footsteps upon the staircase that sound like the old boots Guy Fawkes himself would have once worn. As a history lover, the entire story of Guy Fawkes and his fellow conspirators has always deeply fascinated me. So even regardless of the paranormal, this is an incredibly amazing place to visit for yourself. But if the legends are to be believed, you may get more than you bargained for whilst visiting one of York's most haunted pubs.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of this man who was going to work at 4 a.m. and he missed his transport and decided to use a taxi. Unfortunately for him, he got on a ghost taxi. My aunt is the one that told me the story, but I'm going to tell it like I was there. Don't get confused. So fine, this man missed his transport and decided to get on a taxi, right? He's telling us the story at this point because, okay, he's telling us the story at this point. Fine, he's like, he missed his transport or whatever and he decided to use a taxi. So it's 4 a.m. He's waiting. He's like, okay, fine. As he's waiting for a taxi to arrive, he sees a taxi coming his way. Well, what he thought was a taxi, right? Because it had its headlights on. Fine, headlights, taillights, I don't know, but something. So it had those lights on in the front and it was approaching him. Fine, he's like, he can see, man, that it's a car that's coming towards him. But when he looks to the side, he can't see wheels, he can't see anything, but he can see the lights because he moved to like the side so that he can like give it space so that it can stop here. You know, he was here, so he moved to the side so that the taxi can stop here and he can board. So he's like, he moves to the side and he can't see the taxi's what do you call this? His taxi's wheels, nothing. He's like, you know what? He decides to stand still, you know. But he's like, no, man, he's scared. Something in his heart tells him to go. But he's like, no, he has to go to work, otherwise he's gonna be late. So fine, he's like, the taxi eventually gets there and, you know, he stops it or whatever. So he opens the door, and as he opens the door inside of that taxi, he's like, no, man, everybody in this taxi is wearing all black clothes, and everybody's like looking downwards. So he's like, he gets inside the taxi, his hairs stand up immediately. He doesn't take that into notice. He thinks maybe it's because it's cold. He greets the people in the taxi, and the people don't say anything. And he's like, hi, okay, fine. Gets inside the taxi, sits down, closes the door. Biggest mistake of his life. Fine, he says after he closes the door, the taxi starts, you know, driving. He's like, immediately when it's time for the taxi to get on the road to go to where he's going, he's like, the taxi starts flying. He's like, I closed my eyes one time like this and I opened my eyes, looked outside the window, and he was in the air. He saw himself floating mid-air. When he looks at these people, he looks down, he realizes that these people, number one, don't have feet. He looks at the driver's seat. There's nobody that's driving this taxi. He looks behind him. He can see that these people are looking down, and he's like, some of these people's faces have blood on it. Some of these people's faces, you can't even see them. Like, it's just, I'm like, okay, bro, like, that is scary. So he's like, he's in this taxi or whatever. He doesn't know what to do at this point. He taps the shoulder of one of the people that's there, right? And the person doesn't respond. The person just looks up a little bit, looks up like under the thingy, the coat I think that they were wearing, or a hat or whatever, and they still look down. And he's like, he started getting scared. Now he opens the door and he's thinking of jumping. But as he's like looking down, it's like, it's very, very high. Like, he's high up in the sky because the houses look this small. So he's like, you know what? At this point, he's like, you know what? He's just gonna have to wait and see where the taxi is going. The taxi goes, guys. The taxi goes. He's like, he realizes that now he's back to where he stays. Fine. He's like, they get to where the taxi stops, and they stop at this particular woman's house. That he's like, him and this woman were friends, like really close friends. The taxi stops outside of this woman's gate. Everybody gets out. This man was like, wait, what? This woman also doesn't stay far from where this man stays. He's like, this woman is somebody that he used to tell his deepest secrets to. Like, he was very close to this woman. He thought they were friends. He's like, these people get down, they get off the taxi and they start walking in a line. And as they are walking in a line, they are walking behind the house or whatever. And there's like a little hole there. And some of these people are getting under that hole. Some of them are walking past the hole. He's like, he was so shocked. After that, he's like, no, I need to leave. Because obviously this person is practicing witchcraft. If this person were to see him, he's obviously going to what? unalive him. So he starts running. He runs to his house. When he gets to his house, he finds one of the people that were there. Right? Do you get what I mean? The people that he was in the taxi with that went into a line to his friend's house. He's like, when he gets to his house, he finds one of the people there pouring something behind the room where he sleeps, outside, obviously. You see where the window is. Oh my days. See, this is the window. This is the wall. This person is pouring something over there. And he was so shocked. Like, how can my own friend do something like this? So he's looking at this person pouring whatever. And he's like, this person walks, and then disappears. As soon as the sun comes out, he's like, he could not go back home. So how we know the story was that after that happened, he came to my aunt's house and told my aunt what had happened. Same morning he gets to my aunt, he tells my aunt what he saw. My aunt is like, whoa, that's crazy. Remember I told y'all that my aunt is a prophet, right? So my aunt sits down with him and is like, listen, let's deal with this right now since you saw it. So the aunt tells him that, no man, this friend of yours, the husband, is jealous of you, right? They don't want you to be better than the husband. So she's concocting things so that you do not beat her in life, because you guys went to school together. So if you were to make it in life, you were going to gloat, whatever, and you were going to get a wife, and if you get a wife, that wife is gonna, she thinks the wife is gonna gloat to her and make her husband look small or whatever. That is why every single time he gets into relationships, girl, I was eavesdropping, okay? That is why every single time he gets into relationships, they don't work out, because this woman doesn't want him to get married, because she fears that if he gets married, he's gonna get a wife and the wife is going to gloat because the husband has money or whatever, which is so crazy and like it's stupid. But anyways, that's what my aunt is telling this man. He's like, at this point you need to go get whatever you saw them dig and put there. We have to go get it. They go get it. They dala. When I tell you later on that day, this man saw the lady and he greeted her, obviously because you can't show a witch that you know what they're doing. He greeted her and the lady did not say anything, did not greet nothing, and he wasn't even shocked. And so my aunt told this man that, listen, you, obviously because he came back later on and told my aunt that, hey, I bumped into her, she didn't talk to me. I was like, yes, you must move away from this place. You need to move away from this place. You need to never have contact with that lady ever again. Make sure she never touches anything of yours. She never this, she never that, because now she can't see anything, because my aunt is like, I blocked her. She can't see anything. Your ancestors are protecting you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you have to move away from this place. Like, you have to find another place. And for sure, things started going well for him when he moved away, y'all. He moved away and he lived like near his job, whatever, and he actually found a wife and, you know, got a child. You know, his life is decent ever since he moved away from the place. I was like, at least he had a happily ever after. Unfortunately for him, y'all, I think his sister made the mistake of going to that house and told that lady, the lady that was not supposed to know anything, and she told him like, oh, he has a child now, he's living at XYZ, he's working at XYZ. Yo, the sister spoke and the man died. The same man that got into a ghost taxi a couple of years down the line, he died. Because the sister told the lady where he stays, where he works. She told him where he works, and that's where he dealt with him, because something fell on him at work and he died. Yo, that is how powerful jealousy is.
Hi Daisy, I wanted to share a scary story with you that still haunts me and my mom to this day. My family has always been followed by the paranormal for some reason. I'm not sure if it was something that one of our ancestors did or if it was just bad luck. It all started when my oldest brother went missing. In my mom's desperation, she went to a man who called himself a psychic and a healer. When she reached out to him for help, he assured her that he'd be able to help her with what she was asking, as long as he got paid for it. She hoped that with his help, she would be able to locate my brother, so she had no problem paying over 50 pesos, sometimes even more, which was a lot considering we've never been a rich family. One day, he invited her over to his place. My mom always told me that when she walked into the room he had led her to, the vibe was completely different from the rest of the house. She said it felt cold and chilling, as if there was a thick pressure in the room. Well, as he got his stuff ready, my mom's eyes fell onto a statue of a black Santa Muerte, which, if you don't know, is commonly used for black magic. This was a huge red flag that my mom chose to ignore, since she felt desperate to find some sort of sign that would point her to my brother. During the time my mom was there, the man gave her a monito rojo, a red doll, made of cloth. He told her to keep it safe until their next meeting. The monito rojo gave her an uneasy, chilling feeling, but she was desperately looking for anything that could help, so she did as she was told. Well, when we went home, she put the monito on top of a dresser where she knew it would be safe and out of reach from any kids. A few days later, the man had stopped messaging back. It was as if he had vanished from one day to another. Well, after that day, my mom went to the police station along with one of her friends who was there to comfort her. My mom talked to her over a cup of coffee as she started to tell her that after she had gone to that man, everything had been off. It was as if a fog of bad energy had been cast over the house. The dogs, who were always calm, started to become rowdy and bothered, especially at night. They would spend the whole night barking, and you know what they say about dogs, that they can see what the naked eye can't. This was obviously unusual, since our dogs had never been this rowdy, especially during the night, or at least not since she had gone there. Once my mom had told the lady about what was going on in the house became cold as ice. It was weird, since it was the middle of the summer in Mexico. My mom's friend ended up staying for the night and slept in the now spare room. The room where my mom had forgotten about the monito on top of the dresser. That night was weirdly calm. The dogs were quiet and we were able to sleep peacefully. That was until my mom's friend told her what happened in the night. In her words, she said that she had a lucid dream. She said it was as if she couldn't move other than her head. But it wasn't any normal dream. She described it as if she was the third person. She could only see her body and the figure of a monito choking her. She could see it happening. She could feel the desperation, but she couldn't move. After that day, my mom threw the monito away. Little did we know, this would only be the start of it all.
Growing up, did y'all like that movie called Jeepers Creepers? You remember that creepy scene where they were driving by and they saw them throwing the bodies down the pipe? Because I have a similar story like that with me and my cousin Amanda when we were out in the Pine Barrens. Actually, buckle up, because I've never told anyone this story before. It was me and my cousin Amanda, and every weekend we would go out to the Pine Barrens and we would swim in the lakes. I remember that there was this guy, he would pull up every time, and he was always in this big brown truck, just like Jeepers Creepers, and he had the long hair and a hat, and he always wore a trench coat, and he would always pull up and watch us swimming, and it was the weirdest thing. Mind you, this guy would go up, he would pull up there, and he would park there, and he would stay overnight all the time in his truck. I never thought anything of it. I just thought he was kind of like a weird, creepy homeless man. That was until one night me and her got nosy, and we wanted to see what he was up to. Little did we know that that was going to be a big mistake. One night we went out there to go see what he was doing, because he was just parked in the truck sitting there in the dark. Normally, these people have campfires, because it was legal to stay there, so you were allowed to have a campfire at your campsite, but this guy had no fire at all, and he was just sitting in his truck. And then that's when I started to realize that he was doing something more sinister, because he didn't want to be seen. As we started to sneak up on him, we realized that he wasn't in his truck, and Amanda had actually pointed out that there was cut rope coiled up and laid on the ground, and if you listen real good, you could actually hear the sound of something dragging and grunting, as if he was dragging something into the woods, and he was just making these grunting noises. So obviously at that point we really start getting nosy, and we started to inch a little closer. And now mind you, both of us are sitting in the bushes in the dark being nosy, and we're listening to these dragging noises, and then we hear the grunting of this man, and then out of nowhere you hear the sound of what sounds exactly like a shovel digging into the ground. At that point it was really hard for us not to tie together the rope, the dragging, and then the sound of the shovel. We tried to stay there as long as we could so we can hear it, but to be honest with you, we got so scared that we literally looked at each other and we were like, dude, it's time to go or we're next. But till this day, I think about that, and I've never told anybody except you guys here on TikTok. And you guys tell me what you think it was down in the comments, because it sounds exactly like what my head is telling me. And follow for more crazy stories in my life.
Let's look at this creepy video. This video was taken in Veracruz, Mexico, and it was posted to social media by TV Azteca Veracruz. And in this video, we see some men standing in a cornfield observing something that is not moving but staring right back at them. And all of a sudden, this happens. This video has created a lot of confusion and has sparked a lot of debate. Viewers of this video can't really decide if it's real or if it's some sort of prank. But those who do believe that the video is genuinely supernatural believe that the figure caught on camera is a chaneque. And chaneques are similar to duendes in the sense that they're both elf-like creatures with faces of grown men. Chaneques are primarily found in nature, whereas duendes can be found pretty much anywhere. And the reason people believe that this was a chaneque caught on camera is because the parts of Mexico that they're the most prominent in are Oaxaca and Veracruz. But like I said earlier, there is a huge debate around this video and its validity. As always, let me know your own thoughts around what this is. Is it a chaneque or is it a prank?
This happened last summer when I went to visit my mom's rancho in Mexico called El Saucillo, Guanajuato. That night, it was around 10 p.m. and my cousins and I had just gotten back to my tia's house after hanging out. By the time we got there, my tia and tío were already asleep, so we were trying to not make too much noise. My sister, my cousin, and I were sitting on the couch getting ready to call it a night when we suddenly heard a motorcycle pass by outside my tia's gate. Since we had friends in the rancho, my cousin and I immediately got up and ran to the gate to see if it was them. But the gate was locked, so all we could do was stand there and look out through it. We waited for a moment, looking up and down the street, but we didn't see anyone. No motorcycle, no friends, nothing. So we turned around and started walking back inside. That's when I heard, near the sidewalk by the gate, someone let out a long, drawn-out cry. I froze for a second and looked at my cousin, expecting her to react too. But she didn't seem scared at all. Then, all at once, the dogs around the area started barking. That was enough for me. I booked it back inside the house, and my cousin came running in right behind me. My sister was lying on the couch when we came in. She had heard all the dogs barking, so she looked at me and asked, ¿Qué hiciste? My cousin and my sister kept asking me what happened and why I ran, but I couldn't even get the words out. I was trying to talk, but I was so scared and out of breath that nothing made sense. Then, right in the middle of all of that, my tia came out of her room. She was half asleep and only came to ask if we needed more pillows. My family is really strong in our faith, and my tia is the type of person we consider a prayer warrior. So the way everything went quiet when she came out felt strange. After she went back into her room, I finally told my sister and my cousin what I had heard outside. Right around that moment, my mom called. She was with my dad at his rancho, and she said she was calling to ask if everything was okay. I told her what had just happened, and she told me not to worry. She said everything was okay and told us to pray before going to bed. The next morning, I told my cousin what had happened. Before I could even finish explaining it, he told me he had heard it too. He said he had been in the bathroom around that same time, and he heard the same exact cry. But not only that, he said that when he looked in the bathroom mirror, he saw a shadow pass behind him. After our trip was over and we came back to the States, my mom told me about her own experience with La Llorona at that same rancho many years ago, back when my oldest brother and sister were kids. She said this happened late one night, around 2 or 3 in the morning. She was heading back to my grandma's house, walking through the rancho, when she heard that same cry. She said it sounded like it flew right over her head, and then kept going farther and farther away. When my mom told me that, everything clicked. I realized that what I heard that night wasn't just in my head. It was La Llorona.
Right, this one is not very creepy or spooky, but you may need a tissue if you're anything like me. So Jerry and her husband had this tradition between them. They would always go to this particular stretch of beach and they would walk along and specifically search for sand dollars. It was their thing. It was their special tradition and they rarely came home without any. So eventually they get married and they had 3 kids. A daughter, Riley, and their 2 sons, Tegan and Logan. And then David got sick. He had an aggressive form of cancer and it took him so quickly. Jerry lost the love of her life and her best friend, and those babies lost their father. So a few months later, their son Logan, who was 14, was about to start his first day of school. Jerry could tell that he was thinking about his dad on a day that really mattered. So she looked at him and she asked, "Would you like to go down to our beach, the one your father loved to walk so much?" Logan didn't even answer. He just jumped up and ran straight out the door. So it's the first week of September and the beach is almost completely empty. And it was just the 2 of them walking down the shoreline just the way that Jerry and David used to do together. They were on the hunt for some sand dollars, just like they love to do. So they're walking along, kicking mounds of sand and rooting through things, and they're coming up with nothing. They cannot seem to find a sand dollar to save their lives. And this rarely happens, and you can see the disappointment written all over Logan's face. So Jerry looks up to the sky, closes her eyes, and quietly in her mind just asks that David show her a sign and that Logan could really use a little hello from heaven right now. So she kind of turns her head away so that Logan wouldn't see tears starting to pour down her face. And then she notices something out of nowhere. There was a boat on the water and a man stood up and he started waving at them. Now, she swears this boat was not there a second ago. Like, they were scanning the ocean and looking all around, and there was nobody in sight. And now all of a sudden, there is a man standing up on a boat waving at them, and he yells and calls to them. Guys, he literally said, "Hey, are you looking for sand dollars?" Not seashells or sea glass or heart-shaped rocks, just sand dollars. And at the same time, they both yell back, "Yes." So this man points down towards a sandbar and he says, "Try over there." So Jerry thanks him and they both start booking it down towards the sandbar. And then she turned back around one last time and he was already on his way towards the horizon. So Logan gets there first. And as soon as he approaches, there is a sand dollar and he grabs it. And then another and then another. The more they looked, the more they found. It was such an incredible feeling. And by the time they were done, they had all their pockets full and they had collected 43 sand dollars between the 2 of them. And then Logan looked at Jerry with tears in his eyes and he said, "Mom, this is better than winning the lottery." And now I am crying. Jerry said she felt a gentle breeze brush across her cheek in that moment, like a gentle kiss. She knew. Logan even asked how that man knew what we were looking for. And Jerry already knew the answer. All right, guys, you know what to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Has anybody from the other side ever reached out to you in a moment that you really needed it? I absolutely love stories like these. If you have a story of any kind, creepy or otherwise, I would love to hear it. If you're interested in Creepy Storytime merch, check out the link tree in my bio. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more Creepy Storytime.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
The most insane twist in a shocking case out of Houston, Texas. Let's talk about it. On the night of Monday, October 7th, 2024, a 911 dispatcher in Houston, Texas received a call from a man who said that his wife had tried to exit this world on her own terms. The man's name was Lee Gilly. He was 38 years old, a self-employed software consultant, and he lived with his wife, Krista, and their 2 young children in a home about 4 miles northwest of downtown, a house that they had lived in for more than 7 years. He told the dispatcher that Krista had taken too much of something. He said that he had gone to bed after they had an argument and that 3 hours later he woke up and found her in bed unresponsive. convulsive. On the phone, he told the dispatcher that he was performing CPR as he waited for help to arrive. The call was made just before midnight. Once officers with the Houston Police Department arrived, they walked into the scene along with Houston Fire Department medics. What they found was a 38-year-old woman, Krista Gilly, unresponsive on the floor. She was 9 weeks pregnant with the couple's third child. Paramedics worked quickly and they transported her to a local hospital. 3 hours later, approximately around 2:30 in the morning on October 8th, Krista was pronounced deceased. At that point, as far as what the initial responders knew, what they were dealing with was absolutely tragic and self-inflicted. Lee Gilly's story was they had an argument, they said goodnight off to bed, and then he made an awful discovery. He was presenting himself to be this grieving husband. He made the 911 call himself. There were no obvious signs of anything really at the crime scene, at least not the kind that you would see immediately in the dark showing signs that there was a murder. But the hospital staff saw something that the paramedics had not yet fully processed, because when Krista Gilly arrived at Memorial Hermann, medical personnel noted bruising on her face and what they described to be apparent trauma. Injuries, they told detectives, that were inconsistent with anything that she would have done herself. Injuries that were inconsistent from doing intense CPR. Injuries instead that were consistent with the cause of death being strangulation. And very quickly, authorities started to pay very close attention to the husband, Lee Gilly's odd behavior. But to understand what happened that night on October 7th, 2024, you have to understand who Krista was before she became Krista Gilly. She grew up in South Carolina in a tight-knit, family-centered community outside of Charleston, where, as one of her closest friends would later say, her family were pillars of the community. She was the older sisters out of her sisters, and she wore that title very proudly. She has been described as the type of person who showed up for every single person that she loved in her life, and as someone who had this magnetic personality about her that drew people in. She graduated from Somerville High School in 2004, and she went on to earn a degree from Clemson University, eventually becoming a doctor of physical therapy. She worked as a physical therapist and a researcher at a hospital in Houston. She published academic articles in scientific journals, and she taught as a professor as well. She was, by all accounts, an outstanding woman. Quote, she was really fun. She was just so good at her job and everything else that sometimes people forget just how silly she could be and how fun she was to be around. It was at university that Krista first met Lee Gilly. They reconnected years later for a second date, and then the rest was history. They got married. Lee was working as a software engineer. Krista loved and excelled at her job, and they settled into a good neighborhood. They had 2 children, one in 2020 and their second one in 2022, and they built what a lot of people would call the dream life. They had a third child on the way, and it felt like they were at a very, very exciting point in their life. But what was happening inside of that home is something that only Lee Gilly knows for certain. What we do know is that the evidence would eventually suggest that this picture they put out to their friends and family about their marriage and their life was very different from the life that they were actually living. 2 days after Krista Gilly was pronounced deceased, a pathologist completed her autopsy, and the findings completely and absolutely demolished Lee Gilly's story. The official ruling of Krista's death was ruled as a homicide caused by compression of the neck and upper back, consistent with manual strangulation. The autopsy also confirmed what the hospital had already noted, that Krista had visible bruising and trauma to her face. And it also confirmed that she was approximately 9 weeks pregnant at the time of her death, meaning that not only was she taken from the world way too soon, but the chance of welcoming a healthy, beautiful baby into the world was also no longer. The medical examiner's report was filed on October 9th. That same day, Lee Gilly was officially a suspect. 2 days later, on October 11th, 2024, an arrest warrant was issued for him, and HPD homicide detectives moved to execute it. He was taken into custody and booked into the Harris County Jail on a charge of capital murder. Specifically murder in the course of committing multiple murders, because prosecutors recognized that their unborn child constituted a second victim under Texas law. Capital murder in Texas carries 2 possible sentences: life in prison without parole or the death sentence. Lee Gilly pleaded not guilty. On October 17th, a judge set his bond at $1 million. On October 21st, he posted bail and he walked out of jail. He was placed on house arrest with a GPS ankle monitor, ordered to surrender his U.S. passport, barred from contacting his children or Krista's family, and required to maintain a strict curfew. He was just one out of 24 capital murder defendants in Harris County free out on bond pending trial, and his trial was originally scheduled for May 29th, 2026. So days after Krista's death, a lot of people gathered together for a vigil in her honor. At the same time, in Somerville, South Carolina, a group of 8 lifelong friends, women who had grown up with Krista, formed an organization they called Justice for Krista. Purple ribbons were spread across town. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to help the family cover legal costs, travel expenses, and the ongoing burden of supporting Krista's 2 young children. Quote, "We started organizing to honor her and keep her memory and legacy alive.
life. We hope to continue to do that beyond the criminal case and into the future, end quote. And back in Harris County, the prosecution began building their case, and what they were finding went well beyond the night of October 7th. Court filings from the pre-trial phase revealed a picture of a marriage that was quietly falling apart long before the night of the murder. Prosecutors alleged that in 2023, a full year before her death, Lee Gilley had engaged in a physical affair with a woman from San Diego, California. And on March 18th, 2024, just 7 months before the murder, someone using a Reddit account prosecutors believed to have been Lee Gilley posted that he was quote unquote bored in his marriage and quote seeking a college-aged female for a friends with benefits arrangement, end quote. Krista, at that point, was likely already pregnant or just about to get pregnant, so she was preparing for the arrival of her third child. Her husband, allegedly, meanwhile, was soliciting strangers on the internet. The prosecution obviously saw that as a clear motive, but the defense was offering a different explanation. They claimed that Lee did not hurt his wife. They claimed that he loved his wife, arguing instead that she passed away from a medical condition called hemoglobin anemia, which they claimed could mirror the same physical symptoms of what could look like a strangulation. But before the trial could even begin, Lee Gilley fled. He ran away. He escaped. He left the U.S. On the morning of May 1st, 2026, just 28 days before his murder trial was scheduled to begin, Lee Gilley allegedly cut off his GPS ankle monitor. He landed at an airport in Italy on May 3rd, but border police detained him after he presented a forged Belgian passport and other documentation identifying him under a completely different name. But what he didn't say, and what authorities would later find out, was that this flight and him leaving the country was something that he had been planning for months. Between April and May of 2025, a full year before he fled, Lee had allegedly been in contact with the same California woman with whom he was accused of having an affair with back in 2023. According to prosecutors, the two of them had been having conversations discussing plans to flee to different countries. He had raised the possibility of marrying her to obtain a completely new identity. He had asked her whether he knew of a Mexican identity that he could assume. This entire escape, prosecutors allege, was not a panicked decision that he made in the final days before the trial. It was something done on purpose and previously calculated. Once he found himself in Italian custody, facing being sent back to the US, that's when he finally revealed who he really was. Lee Gilley eventually confessed his identity and told authorities that he was awaiting trial back in the United States for the murder of his wife, still the entire time claiming that he was innocent. Now here's the thing, Italy has banned the death penalty and they will not extradite someone who could be facing the death penalty back to the US. So as for the time being, Lee Gilley remains in custody in Italy. The Harris County District Attorney's Office has confirmed that a formal extradition request has been submitted to the Italian government, but a decision has not yet been made. His trial in Harris County was rescheduled to June 5th, but is now pretty much on hold, contingent on his return back to the States. And whether Italy will send him back or not remains an open legal question with no guaranteed timeline at all. Because it sounds like under the 1983 US-Italy extradition treaty, Italy cannot surrender him without having binding written assurance from the U.S. Department of Justice that the death penalty will not be sought out, and Harris County prosecutors have still not publicly declared whether they intend to pursue it or not, so we would just have to wait and see. And the latest update that I could find as far as the kids aged 3 and 5 is that they are currently still in the care of their maternal grandparents, but it sounds like there is a confusing and complicated custody situation still active. I just hope that Krista's parents are able to keep them in the safest environment that they can. Yeah, insane. And also him fleeing the country and having have planned it beforehand on top of the affair screams guilty to me. But that is all I have. Let me know if you guys are keeping up with this as well. Let me know if there's any information that you think that I should have said that I forgot to mention. But yeah, that's it from me today. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Krista's story. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.